Welcome to the program Agric today on ARCN Television, Abuja, Nigeria. I am your host, Khadija Oluwatoyin Amin. And here this week we're going to be looking at the health benefits and what it takes to, ingest the organic and inorganic food produce. And of course, we have an expert in the studio who is willing to digest that and, give us more details as regards this topic. Don't go nowhere. Sit back, relax. Welcome back. Like I said, the program today is Agric Today, and we'll be talking about organic and inorganic food. I am your host, Khadija Oluwatoyin Amin, and we have a guest in the studio who will be discussing with us on the health benefits and what it takes for one to ingest the organic and inorganic food item. Stay back, relax, and let's hear what the advantages and disadvantages are. Stay tuned.
All right, the concepts of organic food and inorganic food is something that is rife in the market. Organic actually is referring to whatever you have produced via the traditional methods that require, as much as possible, low external input, for sustainable agricultural production processes. In other words, to a large extent, such food should be devoid of inputs that are coming from inorganic sources. And then by corollary, inorganic sources are referring to inorganic food, referring to such foods that you find being produced these days within our conventional agricultural practices, and doesn't give emphasis or priority to the quantity of inputs that you derive from external sources or inorganic sources. Made simpler, you could say that organic foods, therefore, are food produced by reason of not expending resources, the farmer not putting in resources into agrochemicals that are of inorganic sources, including inorganic fertilizer, inorganic chemicals that are meant to perhaps buffer either the soil or try to fight against pests and diseases. Then inorganic materials that are meant for post-harvest handling in terms of either storage or processing. So if you do anything to the contrary, you would be more, deviating more towards inorganic food. But where you limit and in fact eliminate anything that is inorganic in the entire process from land preparation, all through to harvest and post-harvest handling,
Okay.
then you're very likely to have over 90-95% of that food to be organic food. Yes. Where you do not limit it and you accommodate a blend or entirely inorganic processes from land preparation, for example, in land preparation you might decide to use some herbicides to clear the weeds. You might decide to use some certain soil, some inorganic materials to help to improve the soil condition for that particular crop to thrive. Those are inorganic from land preparation. And then throughout the process from the seed preparation, where you have to prepare the seeds for planting, and for example, in some cases, some people have to first pre-treat the seeds that will be used before it is planted. So where that is the case, you are tending more to inorganic food at the end of the chain. Now, in some cases again as well, the source of the seeds matter. If they are seeds that have been sourced from, if they are seeds from sources that have been genetically modified, one will be wary to want to relate with it as an organic food at the harvesting, because the processes of genetic modification, genetic engineering that has gone into getting the seed ready as a genetically modified item that will be used for planting, you probably have introduced some external sources of inputs that will not make it qualified as such.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So that's the way I would explain that. Well, they are actually is a relative perception. But one thing that you may want to know is that in the realm of food tourism, you may find the demand for organic food being prioritized and going beyond boundaries or geolocations.
Okay.
What I mean is that because of a preference for organic food in a distant location, and if a farmer has been identified in a place as that his produce are purely organic, then you will find that such farmer would enjoy the benefit of food tourism, because the demand for his food may not necessarily be within his locality, but where it is required is beyond his borders. And so in that instance, you can say, yes, his food travels further. And the cost of packaging, the cost of production, the cost of presenting that food to whoever, and because it is a prioritized demand, may make the cost of that food item to be more expensive compared to its contemporary in the location where he is. So that these are the things that could bring about such relative perceptions about food. I mean, organic food, traveling far and being more expensive. The debate has not ended. There's this debate that has been there. Should we tend more to conservation agriculture, or so that we produce more organic food, or do we go into do we allow farmers to just produce? What is important is that there should be food in abundance to meet our food security and nutrition, nutrition and security, security and nutrition needs. In that regard, because that debate is still there, depending on the school of thought from which you are coming, one would give it to those who retain the understanding that organic food, production of organic food should be given priority for some reasons. One is about the health conditions of the general populace. The perception is that the more inorganic, so to say, a food is, the likely that the population is more disposed to any form of health conditions that may be affected by such inorganic interferences in our food system. But it's also assumed that food that is produced purely through organic processes and devoid of inorganic external inputs are likely to be richer and healthier in terms of nutrient content, in terms of its being able to retain its quality, over time. Some, for example, if you get into the open market, some housewives are able to say this vegetable was produced with a lot of fertilizer. This one is not without any fertilizer. Some people have that. They're gifted. They're able to know. Yeah. They're able to detect. And so you find some will say, okay, you keep this food on these two maize or these items in the shelf. And then over time, you find that one degenerates faster. The shelf life is shorter. The other one, the shelf life is longer. And so people feel that organic food, stays longer. The shelf life is longer. And so if you follow through those relative comparative analysis, you would find that priority in the long run should be given to organic food production than inorganic. But if you consider the food needs of the populace and our race towards achieving food and nutrition security, you will find that the argument will be to the other side that, look, allow people to use the different available resources and inputs to produce food in large quantities so that people will have access to food. So that's actually where this lies. In terms of spatial characteristics or determinations, landmass that you require to produce X quantity of food. Well, you can give it to those who say, yes, you will require more space. But then, the other thing you need to also consider is, it is also dependent on what particular crop. If there are crops that, via some form of environmental control, environmental control now, not in terms of inputs, but for example, adequacy of water, exposure to sunlight. If under such conditions you can reproduce a food, multiple times within its season, whether it is organic or inorganic would not matter. The space also would not matter, in the sense that you may still require the same size of land to produce the same quantity. However, what makes that perception of large space for organic is because for inorganic processes that are introduced for inorganic food, fertilization, for example, will boost yield. Use of certain agrochemicals will retard pests and disease invasion that could affect yield when it comes to even organic, that could affect size of each output or each product. So at the end of the day, that perception that for you to produce this, you will need more space. So that argument is still relative, like I said, because you will still have to also argue it in terms of depletion of natural resources. If, for example, you are doing the inorganic processes of food production, you find that you will need a lot of inputs over and the number of times that you have to use that space to produce. But in the case of the organic food itself, what goes with it comes, for example, conservation agriculture will enable you also to improve soil health.
Okay.
Will enable you also to be able to some extent, reduce what would have been the attraction of wild or external pests and diseases that are associated with the open large space or wherever you may have done inorganic. Because when you are doing the inorganic, there is a lot of parameters that come to play. But in the case of this one, organic processes, depending on probably the turning of foliage into the soil, it makes the soil richer and may boost in itself the quantity of food that you may have at a time.
Okay.
So it's relative in general. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll take a quick break. When we return, the program continues. Stay tuned.
In terms of profit, we need to understand, let's establish some basic facts. We need to understand that the markets within our own terrain, the markets for organic or inorganic food are still viewed as the same.
Okay. Okay.
The larger population still have not deciphered the difference as such. And so that's why in the open market, both products, one organically produced, the other one passes through processes that are a bit inorganic, people do not see the difference to the extent that they will associate higher costs and understand why you should be paying more for organic. But the middle class, the enlightened citizens who seek healthier food will understand it. And so if they are to seek for such foods, they may probably not depend on going to the open market, but to certain classified markets, supermarkets, or specified locations, specified shops for organic food. And they go with the mindset that this food I'm going to buy here, because I'm seeking for organic food, will cost more. But for the general populace, the difference isn't yet clear.
Okay.
And so that is why it throws the subsistent farmer who does a lot of, does a lot of organic processes to be able to produce food. It throws him or her off balance if they take their food to the open market and find that those who have produced food using inorganic processes are probably making more profits because they have more quantity to sell, but he or she has expended a lot in terms of inputs, organic inputs and whatever to produce, and has this small quantity to sell, and so will feel thrown off balance economically, in the open market. However, if you follow the designated market spaces for organic food, you certainly find that the prices, this organic food come back with higher prices compared to the food in the ordinary open market that is produced through inorganic. Organic food is safe, generally speaking, if you know its source.
Okay, if you
know
know
and
its source.
trust its source.
Okay.
So there's a trust burden on the access to and consumption of organic food. There's a trust burden. And so you find that people who go into the designated markets for organic food aren't just going because they see the label organic food. They are also going that they know the producer.
Okay.
So the issues of traceability come to play, because you want to be able to say, okay, no, if it's food from XYZ farms, we know that we are sure.
Yeah.
And so they just get it and they can consume it because they feel safe,
yeah.
buying food, that organic food there. That is one. The other thing bit, however, if you look at it from a general perception, general, thoughts or concerns, is that there are people who have this experience with their taste bud,
Okay.
that when they pick something and taste it, they will say this is more original, or this tastes better. This is better. This one is fertilizer loaded, So some people will pick corn, and when they eat it, they will tell you, or vegetable, they'll say, no, I know it's all fertilizer thing. That's why it's not very tasty. So it is with even livestock. Then you see some households who prefer, they tell you it's a local chicken that they prefer to eat compared to the hybrid, the one that we call the improved breeds. They'll tell you it's the local one. Why? They tell you it tastes better, it lasts longer, the shelf life is longer, and so they feel that when they eat it, that satiation they have, contributes to a psychological health.
Okay.
That they are
psychological
health.
Wow.
That they get. That yes, I'm taking something that I know is devoid of inorganic sources. It's the inorganic processes that actually has put stress on the ecosystem.
Yes. Inorganic.
But the organic retains and reinforces, stability and resilience of the ecosystem, and especially the agricultural biodiversity system.
Okay.
And so, what benefits we get, therefore, we derive more benefit in terms of ecological resilience if we do more of organic farming that produces organic foods, because elements in the ecosystem, water, soil, they do not suffer from the preponderance of the invasion by inorganic substances.
Okay.
So the soil health is retained over a longer period and in fact replenished. The biological diversity within and around the same ecosystem where organic food is produced is more stable over a longer period. But the case of inorganic, once you bring in the inorganic processes, introduce chemicals and other processes that are not natural, what you find is that the destabilization, because in the attempt to get rid of a particular invasive species, for example, a weed or an insect, you think that that's the only specific insect or weed that is affected. But what you have introduced is a destability in the ecosystem, which affects the biological diversity of that microecosystem where you have introduced chemicals, and of course it's a chain reaction. You destabilize the plants, which some insects depend upon through pollination and whatever, and by that you destabilize the population of those insects, and by that you destabilize the food web or the food chain within the ecosystem. So the inorganic in the long run creates more destability to the ecosystem compared to the organic that introduces a lot of resilience.
Wow.
But it takes time, but we're sure, of course, that it will be stable and it will be better for the environment. Well, the investment, there's no investment in land resources, proper investment that is a waste. And by proper investment, I'm talking about ecologically sound investment in the environment, in our land resources that will not produce multiple yield in the future. And so often, I tell be it politicians or people in authority, state authorities, local government authorities, I say, look, could you think about shifting the investment in certain short-term, what you call employment proceeds. Could you shift such emphasis to investing in ecological development, especially in agriculture, for the youth? And so, if it will cost, if you intend to, for example, empower, like they use the word, 100 youth with motorcycles, the cost of one motorcycle could help a cluster of 5 youth to do a nursery that produces seedlings, appropriate seedlings that can be distributed to farmers. The cost of the wheelbarrow or any other of these infrastructure, because what the intention has been to focus on quick money-making things. And so we forget that if we invest in the land resources, we are not only empowering these youth for today, you have empowered them for tomorrow, because with the proceeds from the first harvest, they can go into the next and they will not depend on you. But if you invest more in these motorbikes and whatever, would you also provide the fuel? Would you help them to be able to be renewing their papers? They need money for all that. How about the maintenance of those things? And that's why over a long period, especially whether short or long term, some of those motorcycles and whatever, they just fizzle out. You don't see them again. And the youths are back again into unemployment. So I encourage local governments, state authorities, and even the national authority to allow youths to come into clusters of 5, 10 who have been trained in the colleges of agriculture or faculties of agriculture in the university, as the case may be. Empower them to be able to produce seeds, seedlings, to do post-harvest handling, and also do contract services for farmers, towards boosting our food and nutrition security in the country.
And that's it on Agric today for this week. Join us again, same time, same station next week. I am your host, Khadija Oluwatoyin Amin, saying, gotcha.